Hello, I'm Atendra Chaturvedi. In this video, we will look at implementing symmetrical multiprocessing fault tolerance (SMPFT) in vSphere 6.5, which is an exciting new feature in vSphere version 6. We will look at implementing SMPFT using a Windows 2012 Server R2 virtual machine, and after implementing it, we will show you how to manage and operate SMPFT also in vSphere 6.5. So I'm back again into my vSphere web client. I'm logged into 192.168.0.210, which is my version 6.5 vCenter server appliance. Version 6.5. There's a data center and a cluster that's defined under it, and I have two hosts in that cluster, 200 and 201. Take a look at one of these. It has the local data store and then two other data stores which are iSCSI data stores that are attached to it, and the same thing with host.201. This is the local data store, and then there are two other data stores, A and B, which are iSCSI attached common shared data stores. And both these servers, .200 and 201, are in the packed pub DC cluster. I right click on that, and what we can do is look at the settings for this cluster. So the DRS automation is fully automated, and I basically the migration threshold apply both priority to 1, 2, and 3, and the options here are basically again all standard options for DRS. I changed nothing. I just when I created the cluster, I had the opportunity to turn DRS automation on, and I basically did that. I then looked at the EVC, and I enabled EVC, and I enabled it to the Intel Nehalem generation, which is appropriate for my system. So that was done as well. And with EVC enabled and DRS enabled, obviously I enabled HA as well here, and so the cluster is also running HA. So if you go to the summary for the cluster, you can see the cluster resources. There are two hosts, and it's running an EVC mode Nehalem generation. DRS is balanced, and it's fully automated. Okay, so that's my cluster. The cluster consumers, I don't have any resource pools, but I do have virtual machines. And so it's a very straightforward standard cluster that I set up, and these two servers are actually identical servers. What I did then was I took my Windows 2012 R2 virtual machine that was actually running in a completely separate host, which was the earlier 202 host, hence the name -202. I migrated the data store and the host for this VM and moved it under the packed pub DC cluster. Now, when I click on Windows 2012 R2-202, you will see that fault tolerance is up and running for this virtual machine. Its status is protected. By hovering over the eye, the virtual machine is running with fault tolerance protection. The secondary VM is running on host 201, and the primary VM is running on host 200. And that's the current bandwidth usage. Now, I only have 1 gig connection between this, so when I started up fault tolerance, now obviously this is symmetrical multiprocessing fault tolerance, which is valid for version 6.5, although legacy can be invoked by working on some advanced parameters. Now scroll up, and I look at the summary. There are some interesting icons. So obviously this is a Microsoft Windows Server 2012 64-bit. The dark blue means it is protected by VMware fault tolerance. It is protected by VMware high availability. I have the cluster has the HA turned on, and EVC is actually enabled. So some interesting icons up here that I thought you might like to see. And we can basically, the advanced configurations is the EVC mode. Nothing much to see there for this. Okay, so let's scroll back down to our fault tolerance. So right now this system is, or this virtual machine, Windows 2012 R2-202 is protected by symmetrical multiprocessing fault tolerance. When I right click on that, I have the option of turning off fault tolerance, suspending fault tolerance, or testing the failover. We can look to test the failover, look at the recent tasks, and basically now here we go, and the secondary VM is now starting. So the virtual machine is powered on, has at least one enabled secondary VM that is synchronizing its state with the primary VM, and that takes a little bit of time. You can see that the secondary VM location changed from being at .201 to .200. After a few minutes, we look at the fault tolerance status. It's protected again, and what has happened is the secondary virtual machine is now running on host 200, which is where the primary machine was initially located. Okay, so what else is possible? This is all standard stuff with fault tolerance. I could migrate this secondary also to a different host if I had a third host. I don't have that. I could do a test restart of a secondary. Kind of did that right now. I could suspend it and restart it, resume it afterwards. It takes time. Let me turn off fault tolerance and then turn it back on, and you'll see that process also. Really, there's nothing much to see. What I'll do is I'll show you the recent task actually starts up, and then it takes quite some time for the virtual machine to actually set up. So let me do that too. So let me start turn off. So turning off fault tolerance will remove fault tolerance and delete all historical data. Do you want to turn off? Answer is yes. We are, and we are turning off fault tolerance. As you can see from the recent tasks here, it looks like that little block for fault tolerance has already disappeared. There we go. That's off, and the icon with the dark blue for the virtual machine is also not there anymore. So right now it's simply protected by VMware HA. Easy enough to turn it back on again. I right click on that, go to fault tolerance, and I turn on fault tolerance. So now there are compatibility warnings, and the one is about the insufficient bandwidth. Like I said, it prefers 10 gigabyte links. I only have 1 gigabyte links, or gigabit links, 10 gigabit and 1 gigabit. And so this, we hit yes here. Select the data stores to place a secondary VM disks. Let me select, say, data store A. Compatibility checks succeeded. I click next, and it's the secondary VM is going to go on the other hosts, and then here we go, click next. So we have a tiebreaker file, everything is there, and I click finish to turn on fault tolerance, and it is proceeding. It takes a while to bring up the secondary machine, so I will pause for the duration. And so after a few minutes, you can see that the fault tolerance secondary VM has started, and we have the dark blue icon protected by VMware fault tolerance up again. So it's running on ESXi 6.5, and it's a VM virtual machine version 13. So this is all the latest ESXi 6.5 configuration. Okay, so this would take us to the end of the fault tolerance video. We've turned off fault tolerance, we've done a test failover, and we have turned on fault tolerance as well. The other ones are pretty straightforward as well. In the next section, we will look at some key aspects of deploying and consolidating a vSphere 6.5 data center. I look forward to seeing you there.